aspects are going to be developed. We extended it last week. We started with a name when we first introduced the concept. We're going to have a name string that lets us uniquely identify each mix-in. We'll find we need that when we have multiple mix-ins of the same type on the same game object. We may find that multiple objects have a usable or a touchable or something of the same type, but we might need to find a specific one, and we'll do that through the name. We also added a recipient because mix-ins send messages to game objects. That's how they communicate with one another, because the game object is like the parent container for it. For the most part, the recipients have up until this point been the guy that touched the game object, right? Because the first class of interactive objects we've been making are the kinds where the player touches them and then it does something to the guy that touches them. That won't always be the case, but up until the point it has been. And so recipient has been the player or the hero. And we set and get that through that API in the base class, which is why we get away with that being private. And mix-in base doesn't do anything else. We implemented a few other mix-ins. What did we implement? Touchable, we remember that. It's kind of like our the first one that we did. And we remember that the work happens on collision enter, right? So when some game object touches another object that is touchable, that other object does something. So if I'm touchable and something touches me, do something. It's pretty abstract in that sense, and we implement the specific stuff in the editor by specifying what callbacks to call. That's kind of like the pattern we use. And you'll notice up on lines 10 and 11, we extended touch types and on touch to be from single strings to be a list, because we found that we might want to call multiple functions or multiple methods when we get touched. And we also found similarly we might want to respond to multiple touch types. What was the example we used? Exactly. We wanted the same kind of object that responded to two different types of things. And instead of using a tag, we're going to use components to add the aspect to an object if it is a player or is an enemy or is of a certain type. And then we extended this to support searching for the first touch type that matches. We made a decision. We weren't going to dispatch all the methods on every touch type that matched. We said we're going to dispatch the method on the first one that matches. And we're going to assume that that's an okay assumption. We got a little bit of work here from 27 to 34 where we pass along the recipient reference to the components that need it. And we're going to look at pretty soon ways of refactoring this so that we don't have to keep updating as touchable. It kind of is a pain point right now. It is a place where we have to recompile our code. When we develop systems this way, we want to not have to do that. We want to be able to develop aspects once and have it kind of work and the differences be data. What else did we do last time? We implemented consumable, right? So if something's consumable, it'll have a consume aspect. And when we want a consumable thing to do its work, what method do we call? We call consume. So consumable implements consume, which does a couple things. It applies buffs and then destroys itself. Because that's the definition of consumable. It's a one-use kind of do some math or apply some attribute changes and then go away. We looked at apply buffs, which goes through and kind of brute force gets all of the buffs on this game object, and it gets all the attributes on the guy who touched me. And if the names match up, we increase the attribute by the buff amount. So here's an example of us using name to find a variable that matches. Now these attributes, were they mix-ins? Trib and buff, were they actually mix-ins? No, they're actually data. We actually made a base type called data, which could be a mix-in, but we wanted to, for reasons that'll be clear pretty soon, have a different base for that. And we implemented one kind of data, which is a container. It's a wrapper for some plain old data. So if we want to add an attribute to a game object with this pattern, we have to have a wrapper class. We have to have like a mono behavior wrapper class that lets us operate on this data. So that's why we have this int data thing. And it implements increment, get, and set. The last one we did was kind of to prove a point. We did is transform modifier to scale up the game object. We also added the ability to rotate and translate an object when you call modify transform. And so I think we did a one-up mushroom, right? Or a super mushroom that doubles the guy's size when he picks it up. Is that right? Yeah. And it's kind of working the same way. So back in our game, we have a hero and we have a main character. And these guys can interact with the objects that are in our game. There you go. There's his grow. And then he goes flying away. I promise we'll fix that. But that's where we're at so far. Any questions about mixin so far? Does it make sense yet? Having thought about it for a week? Is it still kind of weird? Let's make it better. What else do we need our objects to be able to do? So we've got objects we can collide with and they respond and do something to the player. We want to start thinking about equipment. So we'll probably need to have things that we can pick up and put on our guy. Maybe weapons, maybe armor, you know, boots or helmets or chest plate or something. Maybe a shield, maybe the fire flower that he picks up and then shoots. If we're going to really be making a Mario clone, he's going to hold it in his hand and the projectiles are going to come out of it. So we're going to want to be able to interact with the skeleton of the guy that touched us. Okay? And to do that, we can use mix-ins. So, we need some words. We need some mix-in-y words. Let's say, what's an object we can make? Shall we do the fire flower? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So he's going to pick it up, he's going to hold it in front, and then when we shoot, the fire is going to come out of the flower. I think that's what the latest Mario does. Do you have a fire flower and an ice flower?
That's in Super Smash. That's actually in Super Smash Bros. You actually pick up the flower.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking
Mario,
of.
you change color.
That's what I'm thinking of. So I'm going to make an executive decision, and I'm going to say we're going to implement the flower from Super Smash Brothers.
Okay.
Because.
So it basically creates a short range cone-like flamethrower thing in front of the person.
Right, and he's going to hold it. And when you do our action, we have a punch action right now in our game on our character, right? When we do our action, we're going to shoot with it. Right. And he's going to hold it in the right hand. He's going to pick it up. When he touches it, when he has it, it's going to shoot when he punches or when he actions, and he can drop it. How does he drop it? How do we drop items in that game?
It's weird. It's usually like either doing, it's not even doing like a smash attack. It's
not a timer, right?
In a Mario game, well, in the Super Smash Brothers game, it has something of a, you can only use it for so long. In Mario, it's until you get hit and then you.
Okay. Well, we need to make a decision what our drop case will be. I don't mind a timer. I also don't mind when I receive damage.
Well, it's going to be more like Super Smash Brothers, and it might be better to implement more of a timer or a certain amount of.
It could have ammo, right? It could come with 100 balls in it. When you shoot 100, it goes away. Maybe. Either way is fine. Okay. So drop when finally seated. Or maybe ammo out. Okay. So there's our flower weapon use case. What components we're going to need to implement this? Do we know everything we need to know to do this? Do we have a mix-in library robust enough to implement this just with like components right now? Pick up on touch. Do we somewhere on the player where the player holds it? Not yet. So we have a touchable. We're gonna need some kind of a pickup.
Assuming that it's more or less similar to the actual like mushroom, wouldn't it just as soon as you touch it without having to do any pickup motion?
Mm-hmm.
Or I assume that that's what we're doing here.
We could do the animation.
Upon contact, automatically he has it in the right hand.
We could do the animation. We probably will later. I don't want to do that right now. I want to put it right in the right hand. But what does it mean to put an item or a weapon?
It means to make it part of the character.
Yeah, you're gonna
an
equip it.
extension of it.
You're gonna equip it. How about that? So we're gonna say we need something that is equipable. So we will auto-equip the item on touch. And the item will know when I'm equipped, I need to do something. What does it mean to be an item that is equipped? It means attached to the part of the body where it's supposed to be. Maybe if it's a sword or a flower, it's gonna go in his hand. If it's a helmet, it's gonna go in his head. If it's a boot, it's gonna go in his foot. Are there other kinds of power-ups in Smash that go in different parts of the body? I know there's like bunny ears and silly things. You can get Karibo's boot, right? That goes in your feet, you can become Mario, maybe. If it's Mario 3.
Yeah.
So we're gonna need to put
propeller
things.
hat.
Yeah, we're gonna need to put things on different parts of the body. So we're gonna need the idea, we're gonna need some way of specifying that. If you think about an RPG, when you equip an item and it goes in a certain spot, what do you call that spot where the item goes?
Usually like an item or equipment slot.
Slot. So we're gonna need an is equipment slot. Makes sense. What game object in our game, in our system, is an equipment slot? Is it the interactive object? Is an equipable object an equipment slot? Probably not, unless you're like equipping an item into another item. I think Diablo 2 did that. You can put like gems inside of the thing, and if they all matched up, you could get a special boost to it. Did anyone play Diablo 2? You got like a little crafting thing. Items can be this equipment targets, recipients of other equipping. We're not saying that, right? Where are we going to equip our thing?
Wouldn't it be to your main character?
To the character, I agree. Even more specifically, where exactly do we want to equip it onto? It's a sword, let's say. Left hand or right hand? Do we want to specify specific like handedness to our slots, or we'll just say like single-handed, and it'll like go whichever hand's open?
In the case of Mario, probably in this case just automatically equipped to the
Like a one-handed thing, right?
Yeah.
So maybe if we have a two-handed thing, maybe we'll get 2 slots and we'll attach it or something. Or we're gonna have like a head type slot or a foot type slot. So what game object is gonna be a hand slot? What game object is gonna be the hand slot? The hand bone in the skeleton, right? Remember, if we're dealing with a skin mesh, and I think we can assume our player is going to be a skin mesh for our Mario game. Where's the hierarchy? Where's the skeleton on our guy, on our hero?
In the hero object in the mesh.
So we go hero, Malcolm, hey, Mixamo hips, spine, spine 1, right? We've got this hierarchy of transforms. These are all game objects, right? Just like a hierarchy of any other type of game object. There's nothing special about this except animations rotate and translate these things. So somewhere in the hierarchy, we're going to be able to find a hand bone. So their left hand, for instance. So that thing is going to have an aspect to it that says it is an equipment slot. Make sense? Who says yes? Who says no? Who's not talking? Fair enough. So we're gonna go like this. We're gonna say is equip slot, and we're gonna double click on it because that's what we do. And then we wait for mono, and then what do we do? Everybody in unison. Change it to mixin. That's enough for now. Save that. Actually, that's not enough for now. An equip slot is going to be a place where you can put a thing. But is it sensible if we put an equip slot on the hand to equip a helmet on it?
No.
Is it sensible to put a boot on your head? If you want that, you need to make a specific item that looks like that. But we're going to want to be able for a slot to say, yeah, I'm a slot that receives objects of this type. So we're going to make it. We're going to add enumeration to it. Okay. So this is going to support types of objects. So in my usual way, invalid is -1 because errors should not default to 0. If you forget to initialize a variable, that should be your none case. Errors should be special cases. Types of slots we're going to have is what? E-hand. What do we say? We're going to need head for helmets, maybe, for hats and stuff. For the beanie propeller hat that makes you fly, right? What else? Let's say foot, in case you want to have, I know in Mario Maker you can get the shoe or the giant shoe or the ladies' high heel shoe. And maybe you have something on your body.
Koopa car thing.
Or a car, right? You jump in. Yeah, that flying Koopa thing. That's awesome. It could be that. Anything on your chest? Raccoon tail maybe is going to go on your, posterior. Possibly. So we'll add e-body just in case. Okay. If we need more, maybe we'll extend that. And we're going to have a variable of that type. Is it slot type? Yeah, I'll leave it slot type. So there's our slot. We're going to start, we're going to say our left hand is an equipment slot, so we're going to add a slot to it. And same thing for our right hand. There's a slot. Our right hand is going to be a hand slot, and our left hand is going to be a hand slot. Sweet. And let's put one on our head too, just because we'll see what happens when we could do that. So head is going to be a hand slot. It's going to be a head slot. And maybe that's okay, because maybe we're going to use our game engine in the future to do General Grievous from Star Wars. He's going to have 4 arms, and so he's going to need 4 hand slots, potentially. It doesn't matter what our skeleton looks like. All right, cool. What else do we need? So we have a slot we can put our thing on. We have an is touchable, so we can detect when the player walks into it. When the player walks into our fire flower, we are going to want to do something. What are we going to want to do? Equip it. So let's do is equipable. C# is equip. EQUIP. 2 P's or 1? 1 P? Somebody Google that.
Check the dictionary, man. Oh yeah, 2 P's.
Is it 2?
You're correct.
All right. Equipable. So we're going to need an equipable item. What's going to be our item? Let's make an item. Our item is going to be a fire flower, right? So it's going to be another sphere like this. And it's going to have a Q on top of it. Something like that. I'll call that flower object. Flower weapon object. The cube will make long and skinny. Something like that. Does that look like a flower? Not really. Not in the slightest, in fact. I know what to do. Put a cylinder. And I'll rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'll squash it. There we go. That's an awesome flower. If you disagree, that's okay. looks kind of like a hammer, I think, but that's our flower.
That would be like a hammer from Smash Bros.
It could very, and you know what? A hammer is an interactive, is an equipable item as well. So maybe that'll be our assignment, make the hammer. We'll see. There's our flower. Awesome. We'll make a prefab out of that real quick. Throw that into our prefabs folder. We don't have a prefabs folder. Terrible. Throw that in there for now. Our equipable flower needs what to work? To be an object that is pick-upable.
Is equipable.
To me, is to be pick-upable. It needs what? It is going to need an is equipable. You're right. So we can add that. What else is it? It's also touchable, right? What else do we need on it? You can put a rigid body on it. Do we need that? So if it's touchable, how do we say, when you touch me, I need to equip me? How do we configure this is touchable script? How do we connect those dots? Somebody shout it out. Well, what do we know? We know we're going to need some touch types, right? Who's going to be able to touch our object? Right. So what aspect do we look at to know if something's a hero? Is player, yeah. So we'll say enemies can't pick this up for now, but maybe we'll need 2 of those. And on touch, we're going to say we're going to want to auto-equip it, right? To start. So do we have a method?
Yeah.
Forgot to implement it? Let's implement it. Is equipable is where it's not even in there. Where's my script? Is equipable. Here we go. So is equipable needs to implement a function that events can send to it. What should it implement? Using our sort of pattern. Is transform modifier implements modify transform, and is consumable implements consume. So is equipable is going to implement equip. Exactly. We're also going to implement dequip, because in this case we may find we want to dequip something that has this aspect. If it is equipable, it should also be dequipable. Okay? So there are some aspects that should be reversible. Just because of our game, right? We know there's some things that need to be reversible. So we're going to implement both. What else do we need to know about something that's equipable? If I am a fire flower and someone says, equip me, okay, I'm a fire flower and I'm equipable. I want to equip myself in a way that is satisfactory. What information do I need?
An equipment slot.
I need a slot because I know I am a one-handed item, or maybe I'm a helmet, or maybe I'm a boot. So I'm going to need a is equip slot dot eslot slot type, right? I'm going to need to specify what slot I am, because if I go back to my item, my equipable, it's going to wake up equipable. Oh, I forgot to say mixin. Very good. Very good. equipable has an equip slot. Is equip slot to mix in? Yeah.
Yeah, make it public.
Very good. I also see another problem that we're gonna have to fix soon enough. All right, so here's our item. It says I want to be an item that goes into a hand slot, so we'll say hand. Okay. When the player touches this thing, somebody needs to tell this component that the recipient of the equip message is the guy who touched it. Where do we connect that again? Yeah, so I gotta do this. Right? And of course, that's the recipient of our message. What does it mean to equip something? Means we're going to search through the hierarchy of the recipient and find the first slot that is empty where we can attach this object. Then, if found, attach it there. Does that look familiar? Searching through a hierarchy for a component, and if we find that component in the hierarchy, we do something? Where have we seen that before? We're going to do like get components in children, right? And find all the components of that type and look and see if it's open, if it is. Have we seen that pattern before?
Yeah.
We've certainly seen it in previous semesters. Have we seen it like recently?
Last semester I remember us using it a lot.
We use it a lot for like, I remember the pickups in the midterm. Is something a coin? Is it a pickup? Is it a this? Is it a that?
Child just basically hearing whatever the parent does.
Exactly. We do something similar in is consumable, right? Because we search overall components attached to the root, and then we look for the thing that matches. We're going to look through the hierarchy, and we're going to get a slot, and we're going to see if it's open. Do we have any concept of a slot being open in our is equipable? Is in our is equip slot right now? Does our is equip slot know if it has an item in the slot?
No.
No. What would be a sensible way to represent if there's a game object attached to its equipment slot?
Give it a game object.
I'll give it a public reference to a game object called obj. If that's set, it means the slot is full of something. If that's not set, it means the slot is open. Because we can have a null reference and we'll use null to represent the slot is open. Is that a sensible thing? I think so. So null means open, not null means slotted. Is that the right word? So when we equip something, we're going to have to fill that up. Let's take a few minutes now and implement equip, and then we'll take it up.